August 3rd, 1492. Christopher Columbus sets sail from Spain to find a revolutionary new trade route to Asia. We all know the standard historical narrative. He sailed the ocean blue, crunched the numbers wrong, and bumped into an entirely unexpected landmass by sheer accident. But what if we tweaked the timeline just a little bit? What if Queen Isabella didn't just give him the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria? What if she also handed him a fully charged, waterproof smartphone with unlimited global satellite data and a premium subscription to Google Maps? You would logically assume that the entire course of human history would be drastically different, right?
India.
He would simply type in India, look at the screen, realize there is a massive continental blockade in the way, and adjust his business plan. Wrong. Because as any modern driver knows, there is one force in the universe vastly more powerful than advanced global positioning technology. The fragile ego of a middle-aged navigator who absolutely refuses to admit he missed his exit. Welcome to an alternate history where Christopher Columbus had a flawless satellite navigation system, but was still directionally challenged, highly defensive, and far too proud to ever hit the recenter button. Let us set the geopolitical stage of the late 15th century. The global supply chain was in an absolute crisis. The Ottoman Empire had essentially monopolized the critical overland trade routes to the east. If you wanted spices, silks, or luxury goods in Europe, you paid an outrageous premium. Meanwhile, the Portuguese Navy, the dominant maritime superpower of the era, had aggressively locked down the African coastal routes. Spain needed a disruptive logistical strategy, and they needed it fast. Enter Christopher Columbus. He strides into the royal court of Ferdinand and Isabella, completely bypassing the traditional scrolls and astrolabes. Instead, he hooks a smartphone up to a crude canvas projector. He opens Google Maps. The monarchs are astounded by the glowing screen. Columbus types in Spice Islands, Asia. The app immediately calculates the route. A giant red line appears wrapping around Africa, with a little pop-up that says, "Warning, route includes toll roads heavily guarded by the Portuguese military." But Columbus zooms out. He swipes aggressively to the left, pointing into the vast, empty blue pixelation of the Atlantic Ocean. He proudly announces his brilliant new military and economic strategy. He is going to sail straight west. Isabella narrows her eyes and points at the screen. She notes that the app clearly displays a massive, uncharted landmass directly in the middle of his proposed path, and the ETA is blinking in red. Does Columbus admit there is a geographic obstacle? Absolutely not. He confidently tells the monarchs that Google Maps is operating on an outdated topographic algorithm. He claims the giant landmass is merely a minor software glitch, a localized rendering error. He assures them that by ignoring the app's suggested route, he is actually executing a highly classified deep water flanking maneuver to completely bypass the Portuguese naval blockades. It is not a mistake. It is an advanced strategic element of surprise. Impressed by his absolute, unwavering confidence, and perhaps not fully understanding how Wi-Fi works, the Spanish crown funds the expedition. On the morning of departure, the fleet leaves the port of Palos de la Frontera. Columbus stands at the helm of the Santa Maria, looking exceptionally heroic. He mounts the smartphone to the ship's steering console. He types in India. The pleasant automated voice of the GPS chimes in. Proceed to the Atlantic Ocean, then prepare to turn around immediately. Your destination is in the opposite direction. Columbus scoffs. He tells his first mate that artificial intelligence simply does not comprehend complex 15th century naval strategy or the aerodynamic utilization of the prevailing trade winds. He promptly hits the mute button on the navigation voice. This is the 1492 equivalent of throwing away the instruction manual because you are absolutely certain you know how to build the IKEA cabinet. For the first few weeks, morale is incredibly high. They are making excellent time. But as they pass the Canary Islands, the blue dot on the screen begins to drift further and further into the endless ocean. The app constantly flashes a banner. Faster route available. Rerouting. Columbus aggressively dismisses the notification every 10 minutes. To maintain operational security, he initiates a strict policy. No one else is allowed to look at the screen. He tells the crew that checking the map drains the battery, and since they left the Royal Solar Charger back in Castile, they must conserve power for tactical engagements. In reality, he is secretly lowering the screen brightness so no one can see that they are currently 3,000 miles off the suggested grid, and the little virtual car icon has turned into a confused question mark. By early October, the logistical reality of naval warfare and long-distance travel begins to set in. Supply lines are stretched to their absolute limit. Fresh water is low, and the crew's patience is even lower. The Pinzon brothers, captains of the Nina and the Pinta, row over to the flagship for an emergency tactical briefing. They demand a status report. They want to see the coordinates. Columbus, sweating profusely, pulls out the phone. The screen clearly shows them floating in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles from the bustling trade hubs of Asia. The ETA simply says, "Good luck." Martin Alonso Pinzon points at the screen and respectfully suggests that perhaps, just maybe, they should have taken that left turn at the Azores like the machine suggested 34 days ago. Columbus immediately goes on the defensive. He utilizes peak political spin. He tells the Pinzon brothers that they are looking at the map with a civilian mindset, not a military one. He confidently explains that the app is clearly being jammed by Portuguese counterintelligence signals. He argues that the blue dot is exactly where they want to be. They are not lost. They are currently executing a massive, unprecedented naval pincer movement. By coming at India from an angle the app doesn't even recognize, they will catch the Eastern empires completely off guard. He accuses the Pinzon brothers of trusting a digital algorithm over his seasoned, dead reckoning expertise. To prove his point, he switches the map from satellite view back to default view to hide the terrifying vastness of the ocean. He promises land is just over the horizon, desperately hoping the battery lasts another 48 hours. Finally, on October 12th, the lookout spots land. The crew cheers. Columbus breathes a massive sigh of relief, instantly regaining his arrogant swagger. He pulls out the phone. The GPS slowly recalibrates, the blue dot jumps onto a small island, and the text boldly renders on the screen, "The Bahamas. Uncharted territory. Distance to India. Approximately 8,500 miles. Does Christopher Columbus stop, look at the completely different flora and fauna, and admit he has discovered an entirely new hemisphere? Does he accept that the map was right all along? Of course not. That would ruin his geopolitical pitch to the Spanish crown, and more importantly, it would mean the Pinzon brothers were right. Instead, Columbus takes his finger, presses down hard on the screen, and manually drops a pin right on the beach. He clicks Edit Location. He types in the outskirts of India. He then clicks Force Check-in. He steps off the boat, plants the Spanish flag, and looks around. The local indigenous people arrive to greet the strange visitors. They are not wearing Asian silk. They are not trading peppercorns or nutmeg. They speak an entirely different language that sounds absolutely nothing like any known dialect from the East. Columbus's lieutenant whispers, "Sir, according to the regional data on the app, there are 0 spice markets within a 4,000-mile radius. And the locals don't seem to know what a rupee is." Columbus sternly silences him. He declares that this is simply a highly remote provincial suburb of the Asian continent. The lack of spices, a temporary supply chain issue. The linguistic barrier, obviously they just haven't downloaded the latest language pack update. He spots a local parrot, immediately logs it into his digital journal as an Indian peacock, and refuses to take further questions. The expedition eventually packs up to return to Spain. bringing back some gold, some exotic plants, and precisely 0 of the spices they were funded to secure. Columbus stands before King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella once again. He is ready for his victory lap. He declares his deep water flanking maneuver a complete, unmitigated success. Ferdinand, however, is a pragmatic ruler. He asks to see the location sharing history. He wants the raw data. He asks why the trip summary shows an arrival point that is clearly separated from Asia by an entire ocean and a continent. Columbus doesn't miss a beat. He leans into the podium. He blames the hardware. He confidently testifies before the royal court that Apple and Google have fundamentally failed to account for the pear-shaped curvature of the Earth in their coding. He insists that the GPS coordinates were deliberately spoofed by rival Venetian merchants to discredit Spain's glorious achievement. When the royal cartographers point out that another explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, recently used the exact same app, updated his software, and correctly labeled the landmass as a new world, Columbus launches into a tirade. He calls Amerigo a beta tester who lacks vision. In the end, Columbus goes down in history not as the man who discovered a new continent, but as the man who spent a decade and 3 separate return voyages manually editing Wikipedia pages and Google Map reviews just to maintain the illusion that he knew exactly where he was going. Because when you combine unparalleled naval ambition with absolute unbreakable stubbornness, you don't just change the map of the world. You aggressively gaslight the entire geopolitical establishment until they just give up and let you call the local islands the West Indies. And that is exactly what happens when you give Christopher Columbus global satellite navigation, but completely forget to pack his humility. If you don't want to get lost navigating through the craziest what-ifs of the past, hit that subscribe button for funny alternate history right now. Let me know in the comments which historical figure we should hand a smartphone to next. Keep your compasses ready, and I'll see you in the next timeline.